The third year after our engagement, Marco's public confession to his ex-girlfriend hit the trending headlines. This time, I didn't make a statement. I resigned from my executive position at F Group, packed up the jewelry gifted by Marco's family, and said calmly to him, "Let's call off the engagement." He smiled mockingly, playing the long game. "Are you?" Just to be clear, I didn't even attend the engagement party. And as for the wedding, I'll see if I'm in the mood to show up. Anyway, you'll endure anything for the sake of those shares, won't you? Chapter 1. The moment I walked into F Group, every conversation in the office abruptly stopped, despite the migraine pounding from a sleepless night. I could feel the subtle gazes aimed at me, some with sympathy, others with ridicule, as I entered my office. Whispers immediately erupted outside the door. The new intern's indignant voice stood out clearly. "Marco's gone too far. He's got such an amazing fiancé like Roma and still." Another rumor about Marco. Over the past 3 years, every time one of his scandals blew up, he never bothered to respond. It was always me who had to step forward to handle the media. F Group has an entire public relations monitoring team, always notifying me the moment things got out of hand. After 3 years of this, even online hate no longer fazed me. Those looks, mocking, pitiful, curious, had long become routine. Online, people labeled me, "She's so in love, perfect resume, the ideal obedient wife-to-be." I rubbed my temples, shutting out all the noise, then nodded at the tall figure waiting beside my desk. "Let's start, Angelo." Today was my last day, just the final handover left before my career at F Group officially ended. Angelo straightened the documents but didn't leave as usual. The man was half European, with striking blue eyes that stared fixedly at me. Then, unexpectedly, he spoke. "Why are you resigning? Even after all this, you still plan to marry him?" Chapter 2. Angelo had been my assistant for 3 years, and this was the first time he'd ever pried into my personal life. I tilted my head slightly, puzzled. He raised his phone. On the screen was a video of my fiancé Marco and rising actress Amelia. At their drama's closing interview, the two of them looked far too close, teasing each other playfully. I hadn't seen Marco smile like that. So relaxed, so genuine, since he was 18, when he'd rebelled against his family to pursue acting. A reporter asked about his first impression of Amelia. Marco tilted his head, lips curling faintly, lively, free. Amelia's bright face flushed pink, her radiant smile turning shy. Then I noticed something. Dangling from her phone was a snowflake pendant, surrounded by finely cut diamonds, the exact same one I'd once given Marco for his birthday. The reporter pressed on. "What kind of person do you like, Marco?" He paused, his smile fading. Then, with an odd tone, he said, "I hate people who are rigid, those willing to be obedient dogs." The reporter chuckled. "That sounds like the opposite of Amelia, doesn't it? I heard you both attended the same high school. Is Amelia your ideal type?" I already knew the answer. A second later, Marco admitted boldly, "She has been, since I was 18. The live comments on screen exploded. A flood of pink hearts and "unshipping this couple" filled the screen. Amid all the excitement, one lone black comment floated by. "But doesn't Marco already have a fiancé?" Immediately, fans defended him. "There's not even a ring. He didn't show up to the engagement party anyway. They've been engaged for years with no wedding and zero interaction. Must be a PR stunt. It's not the Qing dynasty anymore. Arranged marriages are outdated." The next clip showed paparazzi photos of the two leaving a bar together late at night. Rumors of them going back to the same hotel. I handed the phone back to Angelo, my voice calm. "Draft a public statement to annul the engagement." Originally, I had planned to write it myself, a way to put a dignified end to these 3 years. But now, it didn't matter anymore. It was the first time I'd ever let someone else handle something related to Marco. Angelo's eyes widened slightly, his usually steady tone trembling. "Understood." I watched his tall figure as he hurried out of the office. For someone usually quiet and composed, his reaction was almost gossipy. A sharp pain stabbed through my temple again. I pressed it with my fingers, feeling years of suppressed exhaustion flooding to the surface. But it wasn't over yet. There was still one final step left. Chapter 3. I was woken by the sound of Marco's footsteps. I had waited too long on the sofa and must have fallen asleep without realizing it. When I opened my eyes, he was leaning close, so close I could feel the faint stir of air from his lashes as he blinked. Seeing me awake, he straightened and took 2 steps back. His brows furrowed slightly, those peach blossom eyes of his now cold and detached, stripped of all the warmth they had shown in that interview. "You wanted something from me?" The smell of alcohol still lingered on him. His shirt was half unbuttoned, and on the collar, a faint smudge of lipstick. A red mark curved along his collarbone, subtle, but obvious enough. I looked away, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Marco, we need to talk." He let out a sharp, derisive laugh. "What now? Trying to persuade me on my mother's behalf again? Give it up. I'm not interested in inheriting F Group. Isn't it enough that she's already got you as her puppet?" "Monica has approved my resignation," I replied. The hand he had been using to unbutton his cuff froze mid-motion. Impatience flashed across his face, the corners of his eyes tightening. "Resignation? Did she tell you to marry me instead?" She realized her tricks aren't working anymore, so now she's sending a watchdog to keep tabs on me? I repeated, for perhaps the 100th time, in the same calm tone. "Monica's busy. She doesn't have time to make things difficult for you." It was the truth. Marco's family business dealt in real industry, a world entirely separate from the entertainment scene. Marco had never studied acting formally. The reason he ruled the screens now was mostly because of his face. But in the industry, power plays and backroom deals were everywhere. When he had just started out, he'd run into countless obstacles. And, just like in high school, when he'd accused me of tattling to his mother for keeping track of his schedule, Marco still clung to the same belief, that it was his mother pulling strings behind the scenes to deliberately sabotage him. He shook his head impatiently, as if swatting away a bothersome fly. "If it weren't for my grandmother's dying wish, I'd never have agreed to marry you. I'm at the peak of my career right now. I don't have time to waste on some wedding. Just tell me the time and place, and maybe I'll show up if I feel like it." His thin lips curved into a mocking smile. "After all, for the sake of F Group's shares, you'd endure anything, wouldn't you?" Chapter 4. F Group was founded by Marco's grandmother and later inherited by his mother, Monica. After Monica fully took over the business, she became consumed by corporate affairs. So Marco was raised by his grandmother from a young age. 12 years ago, on a rainy day, my biological father came home after gambling for 2 days and nights straight. His eyes were bloodshot, a leather belt clutched in his hand, as he demanded the last bit of savings my mother had left me. If I gave it to him, we'd have no money left to eat. If I refused, he'd beat me to death. I didn't want to die. I wanted to eat. I wanted to go to school. So I ran, blindly, desperately, through sheets of rain. I didn't even realize I'd dashed into the road. If Marco's family driver hadn't slammed on the brakes in time, I would have died right there. I fell to the ground, heart pounding so violently it felt like it would burst from my chest. Rain, tears, and headlights blurred together into a halo of light before my eyes, and the roar of traffic filled my ears. Then, a pair of warm hands lifted me from the ground, half supporting, half holding me up. A soft handkerchief wiped the dirt from my face. When I opened my eyes, I saw the anxious black pupils of a young Marco. "Roma, are you okay?" Behind him, my father had already been pinned to the ground by the driver. His unshaven face was pressed against the filthy, rain-soaked pavement, his eyes full of venom, his mouth still spewing curses. Terrified, I fainted in Marco's arms. When I woke again, I was in a hospital room. Marco sat by my bedside, his messy hair damp and clinging to his pale forehead, dark circles under his eyes revealing his exhaustion. He was idly tossing an apple in one hand. When he noticed I was awake, he flashed me a grin, a little roguish, a little boyish. "Hey, top student, I'm Marco." He casually grabbed a knife and began to peel the apple. Don't worry. That useless dad of yours has already been dealt with by the police." I whispered a timid thank you. Then, unable to hold back my curiosity, asked softly, "Do you know me?" He ruined the apple with his clumsy peeling and tossed it aside with a shrug. Then he smiled again. The genius girl from No. 1 high school. Who doesn't know you? He was a rich young master. And that rainy night was probably the closest he'd ever been to the ugly side of the world. When I offered to repay him later, he refused without hesitation. His eyes were filled not with arrogance, but with pure pity. Your dad's really not human. Since I happened to be there, it's my business now. Don't worry, my family's got plenty of money. That very night, he went home and begged Monica to adopt me. Of course, Monica refused such a ridiculous request. But Marco's ailing grandmother spoke up. She said the house felt too empty. And since Marco's grades were terrible, she allowed me to move in, on the condition that I tutor Marco in return, and that was how I entered the Marco household. Chapter 5. For the first 2 years, Marco treated me like a little sister. He'd always bring me strange imported snacks, or shiny trinkets he thought girls would like. Once, he waved a snowflake bracelet he'd skipped class to buy. Teasing, call me Gidge, big brother. I hesitated for a long time, cheeks burning, then finally whispered, Marco. He sighed helplessly. Roma, you're so stingy. Monica had little interest in me at first. She was busy fighting for power within the company. And I only saw her occasionally, until my collection of competition trophies grew so large that they filled an entire room. Her gaze toward me changed then, from indifference to satisfaction. She began calling me to her study for lessons, hired professional coaches, and sent me to compete internationally. During my 4 years of university, I rotated through every department of F Group, learning from the ground up. After the engagement, Monica made the final decision. I officially entered the executive team of F Group as Marco's fiancé. Marco's relationship with his mother had always been bad, aside from their equally striking looks. He shared none of her qualities. He skipped classes, got into fights, and dated endlessly. He had no interest in business at all, and even declared that he would enter the entertainment industry with Amelia. As Marco grew older, their relationship only worsened. One day, after another heated argument, Monica shouted, "Why can't you be half as sensible as Roma?" Then she slammed the door and left. Marco stood there, cold-eyed, watching me stammer and struggle to comfort him. Suddenly, he said, "Are you her dog?" I froze. "Why do you obey everything she says? Whatever she tells you to study, you study, practicing day and night like a machine, just to bring home trophies for her to flaunt. Do you even have your own thoughts? Do you know what you like, what you want? I'm the one who brought you into this house. But you chose to stand on her side." His eyes grew cold. "Roma, no matter how hard you work, she'll never give you any shares." I learned later that people around him had been whispering that Monica only cared for me because her son was useless, and she was grooming me to become the next heir. In Marco's eyes, my dedication and achievements were proof that I was scheming for his inheritance. I opened my mouth weakly. That's not true. Such pale, powerless words. But what else could I offer? I was just a sponsored girl, not one of the family. All I had to repay them with were good grades and obedience. Then Marco suddenly leaned in. I could smell the faint woody scent of his cologne. "Tomorrow we're racing in the back mountain. If you want me to believe you're not lying, show up, and I'll believe you." He knew perfectly well that I had a competition the next day, one Monica cared deeply about. She had even switched my tutors to help me prepare. The next day, I went to the competition. After finishing early, I walked out of the exam hall and saw a news alert. Illegal mountain racetrack permanently shut down. Then Marco's message popped up. "No wonder my mom knows everything. You told her about me and Amelia, didn't you? You're the snitch." I replied no, but a red exclamation mark appeared. Message blocked. Once suspicion takes root, it's as good as a conviction. He never intended to hear my explanation. I turned off my phone. My mind went blank, but I didn't regret it. I couldn't allow any accident to happen to Marco. Not even the possibility. After that, Marco must have completely categorized me as part of the suffocating family that trapped him. Conventional, cautious, obedient, The exact opposite of his first love, Amelia. Amelia was bold and radiant. A dazzling beauty who had even played a supporting role in a Hollywood film while still in high school. Later, she stayed abroad for her studies. And only then did the two of them break up. If it hadn't been for his grandmother's dying wish that the two children she loved most could always stay together, then even if the world were reduced to just Marco and me, he would never have agreed to be engaged. At the engagement banquet, Marco didn't even show up. He only appeared before his grandmother, wearing a stiff, forced smile for her sake. The rings were bought by Monica. Both stayed with me for 3 years. A one-woman performance. Marco never once asked about them. In her will, his grandmother left me 5% of F Group's shares, on the condition that I marry Marco. That, perhaps, only deepened his belief that I was after the company's fortune. But by now, I no longer cared what Marco thought, because today, everything would finally end. Chapter 6. I touched the faint indentation on my finger. Even that mark now felt like a cruel joke. I exhaled slowly. It's not a wedding, Marco. It's a dissolution of the engagement. The list and the jewelry are in the bedroom. You can check them yourself. On the nightstand lay 2 engagement rings, pressed atop a property list, a record of the jewels Marco's grandmother had gifted me. I didn't want any of it. Marco's movements stilled. He threw his jacket onto the sofa and frowned. Don't think I don't know you double majored in psychology at university. What's this, trying to play mind games with me now? Using retreat as advance? He rubbed his temples impatiently. Fine, we haven't even gotten married yet. And you're already calculating property? Then tell me, how do you plan to repay everything my family has spent on you until now? I had already settled that debt with Monica. When Monica read my resignation letter, she was silent for a long time. She drew a mint cigarette from her sleek silver case. I quietly lit it for her. The cigarette burned halfway down before she finally spoke. Mother was confused at the end. And it was you who stayed by her side. F Group's transformation tripled our profits. That's largely your doing, without you watching over Marco. I couldn't have focused on the company all these years. She took a long drag, then exhaled softly. Roma, that boy is young. He doesn't know what it means to cherish someone. I smiled faintly. Without you, there wouldn't be the me I am today. Monica sighed, her sharp gaze softening through the haze of smoke. Have you decided where to go next? I thought of the distant snow-capped mountains, the thrill of climbing, the weightless freedom I hadn't felt in years. Yes, I said quietly. I've decided. Monica finished her cigarette, crushed the stub into the ashtray, and for the first time, the stern president's features gentled. She patted my hand lightly. Remember to come back and visit. This will always be your home too. Chapter 7. I didn't want to waste another word on Marco. I stood up, ready to leave. But suddenly, Marco grabbed my wrist. His dark eyes locked onto mine. And, surprisingly, there was a flicker of tension in his movement. Where are you going? He glanced around the living room, not seeing any suitcase. He let out a quiet breath of relief. There's one last thing, I said softly. That snowflake, could you return it to me? Over the years, most of the gifts I'd given Marco ended up tossed aside without a second glance. Only that little snowflake charm had remained, hanging from his phone, perhaps forgotten, perhaps too insignificant to remove, judging from his endless stream of scandals. Marco had 1,000 ways to coax Amelia. If possible, I continued. Please give it to Angelo. He'll pass it on. Marco's grip loosened. He seemed amused now, almost pleased, leaning lazily against the sofa. A faint dimple appeared on his left cheek. So that's what this is about? He teased. Jealous. Are you? It's just part of the promotion. We have nothing to do with each other anymore. I interrupted coldly. You don't owe me an explanation. Everything that needed to be said had been said. I turned toward the door, unwilling to tangle further. Then his voice, tinged with that familiar lazy smile, came from behind me. Come back early. I'm not feeling well after drinking. I want your porridge tomorrow morning. My steps faltered for a brief second. Once, when Marco was abroad filming, he'd called me late at night. complaining of stomach pain. I'd been exhausted, working nonstop for a month. But I still took a 10-hour flight just to take care of him. When he sobered up the next morning, his first words were cold and sharp. "What are you doing here?" How foolish I'd been. "Marco," I said quietly. "Goodbye." From behind came his languid drawl. "Make it millet pumpkin porridge." Chapter 8. The moment I left the house, I headed straight for the airport. 10 hours later, I was standing beneath the towering peaks of Mount Maui. After checking into a small guest house in town, I turned off my phone and slept for an entire day and night. If the overly enthusiastic owner hadn't dragged me up for dinner, I might have kept sleeping. I splashed cold water on my face and looked into the mirror. My naturally distant features, paired with tired eyes, made me look like I could walk straight onto the set of a tragic art house film. Marco once starred in such a film, an award-winning one. Actually, he'd thrown himself into that role completely. For a scene where his character lived with rats in a sewer, he refused to use a stunt double. Afterward, he showered countless times, then clung to me every night for a week. He had grumbled, "Don't overthink it." But at the time, I was genuinely happy. I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd finally gotten closer. I patted my face, trying to shake off the thoughts. That long sleep hadn't eased my exhaustion at all. On the contrary, it felt like years of fatigue had finally caught up to me. From head to toe, I was drained, moving like a ghost. I drifted downstairs and stared blankly at the steaming bowl of millet porridge on the table. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a figure that looked strangely familiar. "Angelo?" I blurted it out in disbelief. The man turned his head, those deep ocean blue eyes, unmistakable. "What are you doing here? Did something happen at the company?" Angelo crossed the room in a few long strides and sat across from me. "I came for the Maui mountain climb next month," he said casually. "The same reason I was here." My mind filled with questions. But then I remembered his resume did mention that he was an avid climber, even president of the mountaineering club at his Ivy League university. Still, I had personally recommended him for a promotion before leaving. This should have been his busiest period. Why was he here? Angelo gave a faint shake of his head and quietly moved a few side dishes to my right. I resigned. I frowned. "You've worked with me for years. Who would dare make things difficult for you? The board? Those old men?" I reached for my phone, only to realize I'd left it in the room. Angelo gently pressed my wrist to stop me. "No one made things hard. It's just that staying any longer felt meaningless." Though we had worked together for 3 years, our conversations had rarely strayed beyond work. Sensing his reluctance, I didn't pry. "If you ever need help, tell me. I still have a few connections left." Angelo had already peeled 2 shrimp and placed them on my plate. He smiled, his deep blue eyes glimmering like ripples on water. "Then I'll thank you in advance." I popped a shrimp into my mouth, muttering inwardly, why was I even worrying? With that face, he'd never go hungry. Modeling agencies would line up for him. Just as that thought crossed my mind, my hand slipped, and the shrimp fell to the floor. Angelo frowned slightly. "Are you sure your body's in shape to climb Mount Maui?" Mount Maui wasn't particularly dangerous. Once the team assembled and planned the route, it should be manageable. "I'll be fine," I said, waving it off, then promptly knocked my chopsticks to the ground. When I bent down to pick them up, a sharp crack echoed from my spine. Apparently, my job had taken a far greater toll on me than I thought. Angelo looked at me, a trace of concern in his eyes. "Roma, the weather at Maui can change fast. You'll need stamina." He paused, then added with a faint smile, "I know a bit of massage therapy. I can help you with some recovery training." And, as if anticipating my hesitation, he added, "Consider it an early thank you for your recommendation." I hadn't realized just how much my body had deteriorated over the years. A little unwillingly, I nodded. Just then, the guest house owner passed by with a broom. She shot me a teasing look and whispered, "Haven't seen you in years, and now your crush came true? No wonder you were crying your eyes out over that block of ice back then." Flustered, I stammered, "We're not." But Angelo didn't seem to hear. "Roma," he said, smiling faintly, "shall we start the training now?" Chapter 9. To my surprise, Angelo's room was right next to mine. That night, during the bonfire party, I sat by the fire, unable to suppress the questions that had been gnawing at me. I turned toward him, studying his calm, unreadable expression, searching for any hint of hidden motive. Angelo, I've paid your salary on time for 3 years, haven't I? So why follow me across the country, to kill me? Angelo hesitated for a second, then looked down at me. The firelight flickered in his deep blue eyes. Roma, do you remember Mount Rosa? He exhaled softly. I'm Aaron, the one you found. Mount Rosa was the most treacherous mountain in Country A, a place said to be protected by mountain gods, where blizzards changed direction without warning and climbers often never returned. Back then, halfway through my own climb, our team received news that another group had gone missing in the storm. Instead of pressing toward the summit, I joined the rescue mission and by sheer luck, found Aaron, nearly buried alive in the snow. I laughed at the memory. So it was you. You have no idea how heavy you were. Before I rejoined the team, I thought I'd freeze to death dragging you along. Angelo gave a quiet his gaze fixed on me. At the time, you said you'd climb Mount Rosa with me again. The memory came back in flashes. The roaring wind, the endless white, me shouting encouragement to keep both of us awake as I dragged that half-frozen man through the snow. I'd told him that we had to survive, that I wanted to see Marco again, that I wanted to reach the summit of Rosa one day. The mention of Marco made my chest tighten. I forced a smile. I plan to go at the end of the year. If you're still interested, you're welcome to join. Still, that revelation explained a lot. I joked lightly. No wonder someone with your background agreed to work as my assistant. You were just here to repay your debt. Angelo nodded. I asked your old team about you. They said you never climbed again. Why? Climbing Rosa had been the most impulsive thing I'd ever done. It was right after my grandmother passed away. I had never believed in gods, but legend had it that the spirit of Rosa could grant any wish to those who reached the peak. I wanted to pray for my grandmother's next life, for her to be healthy and free from pain. I stared into the dancing flames. I still owed debts back then. I said quietly, I couldn't afford to take that kind of risk. Now things were different. I had nothing tying me down. I could finally pursue what I wanted. Why do you love climbing so much? Angelo asked. I stayed silent for a moment. Maybe it was the alcohol. But before I realized it, I was speaking honestly. Because when I climb, I only need to think about climbing. When I reach the top, I feel small. All my love, my hate, my pain, they all seem meaningless against the vastness of the world. It's like I become part of the mountain. I looked down at the bottle in my hand and murmured, I really like that feeling. Angelo didn't say a word. He just listened quietly. And his gaze was so steady, so gentle, that I almost couldn't bear it. I quickly changed the subject. Did you send out the engagement termination statement? Yes, he said, his tone low and firm. Did Marco give you a diamond snowflake? Angelo shook his head. He went straight to Monica's office the next day. He didn't give me anything. He took a sip of his drink, the firelight flickering in his eyes. That snowflake, is it important? I swirled the amber liquid in my glass and smiled faintly. Not really. The first mountain I ever summit was Mount Maui. I brought down a snowflake from the peak and preserved it in resin. It would never melt. Even the diamonds around it, I bought them with my prize money from competitions. To anyone else, it's worthless. But to me, it means something. How someone treats a gift always reveals how much the giver means to them. Amelia once gave Marco a silver tail ring in high school. He still wore it. I stared at my drink, lost in thought, until Angelo's voice broke the silence. It's not worthless. Huh? I looked up. His eyes were slightly red around the rims. It's romantic. If it were me, I'd treasure it for a lifetime. I gave him a puzzled look. He seemed unusually sensitive to stories like this. And before I knew it, I was imagining him late at night, listening to some emotional radio program, curled up under the blanket, quietly sobbing into the pillow. That image, paired with his 190-centimeter frame and striking features, was so absurd that I couldn't help but laugh. Somehow, my heart felt lighter. Angelo silently took the bottle from my hand and said softly, Training starts tomorrow. Get some rest tonight. Chapter 10. I was starting to seriously suspect that F Group hadn't paid Angelo enough. After work every day, he somehow found time to go to the gym and moonlight at a blind massage clinic, 2 side jobs. Just to make extra money, he'd created a detailed physical recovery plan for me. And his massage techniques were so professional that I couldn't help but ask one day, after yet another session, my body feeling light and strong again, "How did you even learn this?" Angelo chuckled quietly. After we came down from the mountain that time, I went to study it. He also seemed to know everything about mountaineering gear. When I left Marco's house, I hadn't taken anything with me. I'd planned to go shopping before the climb, but Angelo had already prepared every piece of equipment I could possibly need. And, as if that weren't enough, he was an amazing cook. Every day, he borrowed the small kitchen in the guest house to make dinner. After tasting his food a few times, the innkeeper was completely conquered. Rubbing her full belly, she watched Angelo washing the dishes, her eyes glimmering. "Handsome and good at housework, he's perfect. If he's not your boyfriend, can I keep him here instead?" She said it seriously. "We really need versatile talents like him." The sound of running water suddenly stopped. I laughed. "Sorry, he's limited edition, not for sale." The water resumed, and I noticed Angelo's ears turning bright red. The innkeeper sighed dramatically, shaking her head as she left, muttering something about capitalists draining the last drop of their employees' blood. I'd always known Angelo was meticulous at work, but I hadn't realized he was just as thoughtful in daily life. When he finished washing up, he dried his hands and walked toward me. I couldn't help but say, half jokingly, half sincere, "It's only been a few days, and I'm already getting dependent on you." Angelo's eyes lit up. He smiled, a quiet, genuine smile, and for a moment, I just stared at him. His mixed-race features were striking, and his sapphire blue eyes gleamed like gems set into a marble sculpture. I twisted my wrist thoughtfully and said, "You're practically my personal assistant at this point. Interested in continuing the job? I'll pay you according to F Group's executive rate, fair and generous." Angelo's smile faded. The air around him seemed to cool several degrees. After a long silence, he said softly, "No need. Just think of me as your Cinderella." That wouldn't do. Repaying kindness with labor wasn't my style. We were set to climb the mountain the next morning. So that night, I quietly prepared a separate bank card for him, planning to give it to him once we descended. Beside it sat my phone, which had been turned off for a long time. I hesitated for a while, then finally plugged it in and turned it on. I'd expected a few missed calls, maybe some of Marco's sarcastic messages, but the moment the screen lit up, a flood of voicemails and notifications poured in, so many that the phone froze, then went completely black. I just stood there, staring at the dead screen in stunned silence. Chapter 11. A wave of familiar exhaustion washed over me. I tossed my phone into the air a few times, seriously considering throwing it straight into the bonfire outside. But the nearest bank in this little town was a 2-hour drive away. And in this day and age, there's no such thing as escaping the world where there's Wi-Fi. With a sigh, I gave in and turned the phone back on. It froze for a while before finally becoming responsive again. I scrolled to the top and saw a message Marco had sent the day after I left. "Roma, if you've got the guts to leave, then don't regret it later." A few days later, he had reposted a news clip. I tapped it open. It was a clarification video. Before the reporter could even finish speaking, Marco was already staring straight into the camera. That part of the interview where I mentioned my ideal type was actually us reenacting a scene from the show. MS. Amelia and I are merely colleagues, nothing more. Anyone spreading rumors should be ready to face legal action. His eyes were dark and bloodshot, his tone edged with something dangerously close to obsession. But the comments section was gleeful. Did Marco break off the engagement so he can publicly date Amelia? Am I the only one who noticed he's wearing a ring? He didn't wear one when he was engaged, but now that he's supposedly single, he's got one on. I bet it's a matching ring with Amelia. Why does he look even hotter when he's losing his mind? Whenever people speculated about Amelia, Marco would simply reply, "No, I haven't broken off the engagement." I rewound the video, and there it was. The tail ring he'd always worn was gone. In its place, He now wore the engagement ring, expressionless. I closed the video and scrolled through the flood of messages that followed. Are you really going to ignore your grandmother's last wish? Roma, do you even have a conscience? After everything Marco's family did for you, and you just quit like that? The competitors are seizing the chance to smear F Group. The stock's already dropping. Is this how you take responsibility? I never agreed to break off the engagement. I won't sign anything. Who gave you the right to issue that public statement? How could you leave without taking anything? You're a woman. Don't you have any sense of safety? My mom says I deserve this. Weren't you supposed to be the one keeping an eye on me? Why don't you listen to her anymore? Roma, Amelia took the snowflake by mistake. I didn't give her your things. Roma, I can't sleep. I'm drunk. Come pick me up. Roma, my stomach hurts. If you don't come, I'll just die of pain. The messages stopped 2 days ago. The last one read, Roma, I can't find you. That night, he had called 78 times. I turned off the screen and felt a dull, indescribable ache in my head. If this had been years ago, just hearing that Marco needed me would have made me forget every cruel word he'd said. I would have been overjoyed, pathetically so. But now, all I felt was a kind of nauseating disgust. The kind you get watching someone eat spoiled food. Outside the window, the snow-covered peaks blurred into the darkness. I thought to myself, I really should have just thrown that damn phone into the fire. And then, the screen lit up again. Open the door. Chapter 12. The knocking came almost at the same time as the message, urgent and angry. Pounding through the cold night. I gritted my teeth and ignored it for a while. But eventually, I got up and opened the door. The moment it swung open, a dark figure swept in with the howling wind and snow, and wrapped me tightly in his arms. Marco's voice trembled with fury beside my ear. Roma, you bastard, how could you just disappear like that? No one would tell me where you were. I thought you were dead. Even his breath was icy, hitting my skin like shards of frost. I shivered and pushed him away with all my strength. Marco, we have nothing to do with each other anymore. Keep your distance. There was fire burning in his eyes as he grabbed my wrist hard. Nothing to do with each other? I took you home when you had no one. Doesn't that count as something? My family found the evidence that got your father sentenced to life. Doesn't that count as something? I never signed your stupid contract. I don't acknowledge that so-called breakup statement. You still have 5% of F Group's shares. I'm your fiancé. Doesn't that count as something? Enough. His voice began to blur in my ears, a harsh, buzzing sound that made my temples throb. And before I even realized it, I was shouting back, my voice sharp and trembling. I know. The Marco family has been so generous. You don't have to remind me every single time. You saved me. Your grandmother loved me. Your mother helped me. Marco, what else do you want me to do? Do you want me to skip classes with you? Follow you overseas to be your manager? Fight Monica alongside you? Monica battled the board for years. If the company's transformation had failed, F Group would have gone bankrupt. Would you really have wanted your grandmother's and Monica's lifelong efforts to go to waste? If I hadn't done everything perfectly, do you think Monica would have kept overlooking your messes? Marco, when you were performing plays abroad, your grandmother's Alzheimer's had already gotten so bad she could talk to her own reflection for hours. You wanted to chase your dreams. And yes, Monica opposed you, but not everyone in this world revolves around you. Everyone has their own responsibilities. No one has time to keep playing the villain in your story. Marco stared at me silently. Then he slowly lifted a trembling hand and touched my face. I tried to move away, but not fast enough, and only then did I see the cold, wet traces on his fingers. Marco, proud, arrogant Marco, was bowing his head, murmuring as he looked at the drops of water on his hand. I'm sorry. I didn't even realize I was crying. It felt like exhaustion itself was speaking through me. Marco, the illegal motorcycle race, yes. I was the one who reported it. I went there that night. There were no barriers, no first aid stations, no hospitals nearby. The closest one was 5 kilometers away. I couldn't imagine what would happen if something went wrong. But aside from that, I never spied on you. Marco whispered, almost tenderly, don't cry. I believe you. 4 years. Everything I said had only earned me his cold, mocking laugh. Hearing I believe you now, it came far too late. Go back. Marco, I don't want to be your wife, and I don't want your family's shares. Every cent I have, I earned through my own work. If you still think I owe something to the Marco family, then take it all. Let's not contact each other again. Chapter 13. Marco suddenly looked up, eyes bloodshot and glistening with rage. He moved as if to pull me into his arms again. Don't. I struggled so violently that my head slammed against the half-open door with a thud. At that exact moment, Angelo appeared at the top of the stairs. In a flash, he was in front of me, his fist connecting hard with Marco's face. Marco staggered backward and fell to the ground, while Angelo caught me firmly, his eyes full of concern. Roma, are you all right? Marco, completely caught off guard, sat stunned for a second. Then, as blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, his confusion slowly turned into burning fury. Your assistant? Roma, you left me for him, didn't you? The absurdity of the scene made me laugh, a quiet, broken laugh. I suddenly realized how pointless my earlier words had been. Marco's first instinct had always been distrust. He never once believed me, not truly. Maybe his so-called friends had planted those doubts. But he chose to believe them. I looked at him, at that once handsome face, those familiar brows and eyes, that had haunted me since that rainy day so many years ago. That fleeting image of him, a boy standing in the downpour, had kept me awake countless nights, had given me the strength to stand on one podium after another. But if 10 years of effort, of sacrifice, of shouting myself hoarse, was what it took to earn even a shred of his trust, then I didn't want it anymore. He had once been the light of my youth, but now, I wished I had never met him at all. Yes, I said, my tone dripping with sarcasm. Angelo and I have been secretly involved all along. I broke off the engagement because I was guilty. That's exactly the kind of woman I am. So go ahead, Marco. Stay far away from me and celebrate it with fireworks. Angelo stepped forward, his expression icy, his voice sharp as frost. Marco, please stop harassing my girlfriend. Otherwise, I won't mind handling this my own way. I blinked, half amused. Well, I thought, he's getting into character pretty fast. Then, sirens wailed in the courtyard. The police arrived just in time to see Marco lunging toward Angelo, screaming incoherently. The innkeeper came rushing up behind them, panting, clutching a wooden stick. Roma, I'm here. I didn't even know whether to laugh or cry. As the police restrained Marco, he still shouted over his shoulder, Roma, I'm your fiancé. I let out a cold, mocking laugh. You didn't even show up to the engagement party. Marco, if anyone was engaged that day, it was me and your mother. His face went pale, his lips trembled, but no sound came out. Chapter 14. After calling Monica and getting her calm reply, leave him there. 2 days in a cell will knock some sense into him. I turned around and saw Angelo half kneeling by the bed, testing the temperature of a basin of water with the back of his hand. He looked up and said gently, your hands are freezing. Soak your feet for a bit, you'll sleep better. I obeyed, lowering my feet into the warm water, watching as Angelo carefully dabbed ointment on the bump on my forehead. Then he wrung out a hot towel and began to wipe my face with it. Feeling a little embarrassed, I quickly took the towel from him. I'm not a child. You don't have to be that attentive. You're my assistant, not my nanny. Angelo gave a soft hum in response, his deep blue eyes glinting with amusement. It's a girlfriend privilege. I froze, awkwardly clearing my throat. Sorry, Angelo, I really dragged you into this mess. He shook his head lightly. Even if it's fake, I'm honored. I made a mental note right then. His salary for this month would be doubled, and I'd add a bonus for emotional damages. Half joking, I said, you act so naturally. Maybe you should go into showbiz. You'd have a brighter future than being my assistant. Angelo replied without hesitation, his tone calm and steady. I wasn't acting. Then, with a voice as smooth as if he'd said nothing unusual, he added, I like you. That wasn't a performance. He dropped the emotional grenade so casually that I sat there on the edge of the bed, mouth half open, staring blankly into the air for a long moment after he left. A few minutes later, Angelo returned, as composed as ever, carrying a cup of warm milk. He set it gently on the bedside table and said softly, "If you can't sleep, call me, I'll be right outside." As he turned to go, I blurted out, "Angelo." He stopped and leaned closer, his gaze steady. I met his eyes and said quietly, "If that's the reason you've stayed by my side, then I'm sorry. I'm not thinking about that kind of relationship right now. Maybe I never will. For once, I finally have time to do the things I want to do. In the next 10 years, I plan to climb the highest peaks, mountains no one's ever conquered, and even try free soloing. I won't deny that I like you, Angelo, but that's all it is." Chapter 15. When Angelo heard the words "I like you a little," his eyes lit up instantly, and I swear, if he had a tail, it would have been wagging by now. "Wait here," he said. Less than a minute later, a stack of papers was shoved into my hands, his personal resume. Unlike the one I had seen when I hired him, this one was exhaustive. It listed everything: his complete education history, detailed physical data, financial status as of last month, even his family tree. I flipped through it, stunned. "Your father is the CEO of KWT Group?" My gaze slid to the assets column, then to the salary card I'd been planning to give him, and suddenly I felt like a charity organization redistributing wealth. When I reached the page with his body measurements, my face went hot. I shut the file quickly and set it aside. Angelo knelt beside the bed again, his deep blue eyes solemn and steady. "Roma, the first time I saw you was at the National Math Olympiad in our sophomore year of high school. I liked you from that day on. I'm not giving you this to show off, but to prove that I'm physically healthy, mentally sound, and financially independent. My feelings for you come from genuine admiration and affection, not from pity, guilt, or obligation. You don't owe me anything, honestly. The fact that you even like me a little, that's already more than I ever hoped for. Marco was a lucky fool. He never realized your love was a priceless gift. I'll accept whatever kind of relationship you want, employer, friend, anything. I just wanted you to know, your existence alone is enough to make someone else happy." My vision blurred with sudden heat. My voice came out thick. "Thank you. I really needed to hear that tonight." I steadied my breath, took out a bank card, and pushed it toward him. "Let's keep it as employer and employee for now." Angelo didn't look disappointed. He simply accepted the card and extended his hand. Then, "Does the employer want a friendly hug?" I hesitated, then nodded, and let him pull me into his arms. His embrace was strong but gentle, carrying a faint scent of sunlight and soap. It should have been a comforting hug. Yet for some reason, all the grief I'd held in for years came rushing out. The tears wouldn't stop. Angelo said nothing. He only held me tighter and softly patted my back, until I drifted off to sleep in his arms. Chapter 16. The next morning, we set off. The climb was challenging, but after hours of effort, we finally reached the summit. We camped at the peak, and when I opened the tent at dawn, the sight of the sun rising above the white ridges filled me with a quiet, profound peace. For the first time in years, my mind was completely still. No regrets, no noise, just the mountain, and me. Over the next 2 years, I climbed countless peaks, sometimes with Angelo, sometimes alone. Every now and then, Marco would send me messages, no matter how many times I changed my number. He somehow always managed to find me. I never replied, until one winter afternoon, sitting with Angelo at a cafe beneath the glacier. I saw Marco, alone, staring into a cup of black coffee. I murmured something to Angelo and walked over. "If you've got something to say, just say it." Marco's dark eyes locked on me. He spoke slowly, voice hoarse. "Roma, as long as you're willing to come back, no one will ever take your place." His hand tightened around the coffee cup, veins standing out starkly. He was still wearing the engagement ring, but now it had been altered, inlaid with the diamond snowflake. "I don't care about Angelo," he said quietly. "Roma, I love you. I've always loved you," Marco said quietly. "I just didn't know how to face it. So many things went wrong between us. I hated that you wouldn't stand by my side. I worried that it was the Marco family's money, not love, that kept you near me. Roma, I never touched those women, I swear." I looked at him, calm, detached. He was so close that I could feel his breath. Yet somehow, he felt farther away than the mountains and glaciers beyond the window. My voice was soft but steady. Marco, after all these years, do you really not know whether I loved you? You just assumed I'd always be here, waiting, so you made me the safe outlet for every storm inside you. But in my world, that isn't love. His face turned pale. He reached out as if words could save him. I'll learn. Roma, I'll learn how to love you right. I miss you. I really do. I watched him in silence. Once, he had been like a god to me, the man who pulled me from the fire. And later, the same man who burned through every ounce of love I had left. I was still grateful to him, but gratitude was not love. It's over, I said. Marco, once I make a decision, I never look back. Chapter 17. Outside the cafe, Angelo was leaning casually against the car, waiting. I nudged his shoulder lightly. Come on, time to head for Mount Rosa. We climbed it together. This time, the weather was perfect, as if the mountain gods were smiling down on us. At the snow-covered summit, surrounded by endless white, I closed my eyes and made a solemn wish to the spirits of the mountain, a wish for my grandmother's peace and happiness in the next life. When I opened my eyes, I found Angelo beside me, eyes shut, lips moving slightly. I leaned close and brushed my lips against his cheek. He sucked in a startled breath, and I couldn't help but laugh. I took his hand. The mountain god here is said to be very powerful. So, our wishes will all come true. Angelo's fingers tightened around mine. His ears were burning red, but his blue eyes shimmered like sunlight reflected on ice. I turned toward the vast, silent expanse of snow and sky. Everything from the past lay far behind me now. And ahead, there were still so many mountains waiting to be climbed.